Changing a habit is not as hard as we think it is. The only reason we think it's so hard or an impossible task is genuinely because we don't understand the process of changing a habit and how to go about it. Hi, I'm Julia. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. The past few videos I've been talking a lot about challenging our beliefs and changing them, and the way we actually change our beliefs and the way we see ourselves is by taking action in our life and changing those habits. So one of the biggest steps to changing how we perceive ourselves and who we think we are is by changing our habits to reflect the version of ourselves that is most authentic to ourselves. But if we are doing things and we have all these little habits and routines and rituals and, dare I say, compulsions. I know for myself, somebody who deals with OCD on a regular moment-to-moment basis, it often feels impossible to change these little things that I do that are not serving me at all, but all it is just changing the habit. And by changing the habit, what I mean is just changing the actions we take that create this pattern. Really, it's just changing a pattern, a habit, a pattern, call it whatever you want. But if we are doing something repetitively, chronically, over and over and over again that isn't serving us, then we have to break down the reasons why we're doing it and try our best to understand it, and then replace it with something that we can actually commit to and stick by instead. And maybe we won't get it right the first time, and that's okay, but we keep on trying because we know trying to change this habit and replace it with something else is so much better than staying stuck in that cycle. So I'm currently in the midst of figuring out how to go about doing that with a lot of the OCD things that I struggle with, because it is really holding me back in so many different ways, and I don't want it to anymore. But I haven't fully gotten there yet, so we won't use that as an example, but we will use my eating disorder as an example, because that is something that a lot of people struggle with. And honestly, we call it an eating disorder, but really what it is just a pattern or a habit of disordered eating. So for me, in my eating disorder, it was about restricting and just eating less and less and less food. So the first step in changing this habit pattern of disordered eating was I decided I can't live like this anymore, and I need to be willing to do whatever it takes to get me into a healthy state of mind when it comes to food, a healthy relationship with food. So once I committed within myself that, then the next step showed up. And the next step that showed up for me was to focus that energy that I would on how do I eat less, and all of the thoughts that I have about food and hunger and being thin and weighing less, constantly weighing myself, all that energy of all those things that I was doing, I had to focus that onto something else. Because if you just stop doing the thing, you're still gonna have all this energy that you were once putting towards doing that thing, whether it was restricting your food or whether it was a different type of like addiction, maybe an addiction to video games or an addiction to a substance, whatever it may be. You have all this energy that you used to do doing whatever it was you were doing, or thinking about whatever it was you were thinking about that's not serving you, and you gotta put it somewhere, or you're going to put it towards whatever the next thing is that probably won't serve you if you're not consciously deciding to do so. So at the time when I was deciding to stop the eating disorder completely, I was seeing a lot of vegan videos, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna put it towards eating vegan and cooking my own food and trying all these yummy restaurants in LA, because they had a lot of vegan restaurants here, which this was like 10 years ago, so veganism wasn't as popular, and here was a big hub for it. I was already vegetarian, so it wasn't like that big of a switch, but it was something that I always wanted to do that I just never made the time or had the energy for, because I was so focused on how do I be as small and skinny as possible. But when I made the switch to how do I be healthy, I decided let's see if I could do that and be vegan. And I felt very passionately about doing so. So that's why I was able to commit so heavily towards it and really make those changes. And it also turned into something that wasn't just about food anymore. It was also about like products I use. How can I be more sustainable and clean with the products I use, vegan or not, whatever. So ultimately it became a huge lifestyle change for me that all was stemming from healing my eating disorder. But to get back to the pattern changing, I replaced the time that I would think about how I could eat less or minimize my food, or all the time I was thinking about how hungry I was, with researching what is vegan. And instead of checking the food for the lowest amount of calories, I was checking food for what are the ingredients. Are they healthy? Are they vegan? Are they whatever it may be. So I started replacing all of the old patterns with new patterns that felt more exciting to me. And it's not really about what it is you're doing, it's about how you feel about what you're doing. Because I could have turned being vegan into a really unhealthy situation as well. But it was my intention and excitement towards trying something new and fueling my body that made it not be that. Another Another example of when I did this is when I left my really toxic relationship. I was putting all this energy towards it all of this time, and so when I left it, I had these gaps of like, what do I do? I was super anxious. I was like, do I go back? Like, I was freaking out. So I ended up filling that in with just dating a bunch of people back to back to back until I finally was like, okay, this isn't sustainable, but it did what it needed to do to get me out of that even worse situation. And so when I was like, okay, I don't think this is it for me, something else showed up that I could put all of my time and energy into that would serve me and that would be more sustainable, and that was Snapchat. The opportunity to do Snapchat full-time showed up 2 months after I was completely done with that relationship. And I put my all into it, and I've been putting my all into it, and it's brought me back to LA, it's brought me amazing opportunities, it's brought me new friends, and I can honestly say this is a habit or a pattern that I feel fulfilled by and enjoy doing. It's not the habits that we have that's the problem or the patterns. It's, is the habit that we have or the pattern serving us more so than it is hurting us? And that's really why we need to change certain habits and certain patterns. Not necessarily because they might be bad or wrong. Like, some patterns that may be good for some people may not be good for other people. It's not always like a destructive, toxic, addictive pattern that we are trying to change. It can be something so simple as maybe working too much. Like, maybe you're working too much, and for some people they need to work more and they need to work a little too much because that excites them and fulfills them, and that's giving them more energy. But maybe for you it's draining you. It's like you have to look at the pattern and be like, is this draining me? Is this causing suffering? Is this leading me away from who I really am? Or is this bringing me closer to it? And there's always going to be pros and cons to whatever habit or pattern we change. We obviously are doing it for a reason, so there is something that we are taking away that we find positive, but sometimes those negatives that come with that positive outweigh the positive of the pattern, and that's when we need to change it. So my challenge for you is to look at your patterns, look at your habits, be like, what is serving me, what isn't, and really sit with yourself, journal all of the reasons why, and ask yourself, what could I do instead that will serve me? Where could I take the energy from this specific habit or pattern and put it into a different habit or pattern that is going to bring me more joy and be more aligned with the vision I have for myself, and make me feel excited and passionate to do more of it, as opposed to doing it because I just can't stop doing it. Because we always get a choice. It's, are we going to choose to change it or not? Even when you think you don't have a choice, you probably do. So with that, I will see you in my next video next week. I love you guys so much. Bye.